So, Susan, tell us about your journey to Brookdale Community College.
I was very lucky. I was a junior in high school when a man who happened to work for Brookdale moved next door, Dr. Frank Gimbel. He taught anatomy and physiology, and he kind of took me under his wing. He said, don't be an elementary school teacher. You need to be a fine arts major. You'll have more doors open to you when you graduate. And I took him up on it. So instead of going to Trenton State at the time, I went to Fairleigh Dickinson. Frank had made a call and I was in. I loved the arts. Next step was, in my junior year in college, Frank said, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to get a master's degree? Yeah, I would like to get a master's degree. He said, well, why don't you, the markets that are open right now are library science. Wait, can we do that over?
Yep. So let's go from
okay.
when Frank.
Okay. So now I was in my junior year of college. And Frank said, well, what are your plans? And actually, I wasn't sure, because I had come from a family that was first generation American, and my parents had an 8th grade education, and they really couldn't help me. But I knew some people who were getting a master's degree, and I thought, well, I'll get it in education. He said, education, the field is closing now. It isn't too open, but library science is. So I thought, well, there are 4 types of libraries, so I could work in a public library and help children and work with them in that way. So I agreed to get my master's in library science and museum studies. Frank said, of all the 44 library schools, the University of Michigan is tops. Why don't you go there? So I applied for the University of Michigan. I got in on a scholarship. And then I come home, and it turns out that this community college was just starting, because when I graduated, it was 1969, December. Frank told me about this community college. I was applying in New York, Metropolitan Museum of Art. I really didn't know. I was floundering a bit, but he suggested that I interview at Brookdale Community College. I did, and it's the best thing I could have done.
Great, great. All right. So let's give that a beat. All right. And now the next question I'm going to talk to you about is explain the evolution of the Learning Resource Center as you remember it. So let's go over that a few things. You know, it was called the Learning Resource Center, not the library. Why? I'm just asking.
The Learning Resources Center was more than books and more than printed material. In order for students to be able to pass their courses or fulfill their objectives, the Learning Resources supplied print materials as well as non-print. And non-print was the operative word here, and it was big, because if students were slow learners, needed more time, read slowly, there was visuals or audio. And not only did the library work with the Instructional Materials Center, which made specific learning materials, but these were now accessible in the library. So now we had learning materials, audio visual, and we had print. And when the students would come in, we would personally help them get whatever it is we felt they needed to fulfill their learning objectives.
And tell us about how you interacted with faculty in that way.
Faculty were developing their learning materials to support their learning objectives. So the librarians worked, let's start
from the beginning. So tell me how you interacted with faculty under this system.
Media specialists, which we were called, worked very closely with individual faculty and faculty teams in getting and ensuring that the right materials were available for students so that they could, so the objective would be supported with audio visually and print with print.
Now, tell us a little bit about how the media specialists were able to, well, let's say it this way. Was this a very innovative approach to learning?
It was innovative because the audiovisual materials supplemented their ability to learn. Everybody had different measures of, not measures, I'm sorry, different, not styles, what's the word?
Well,
Abilities.
Okay.
Can we
so
start
let's go
again?
back. Yep.
Yeah.
So tell us how media specialists were able to support this new style of, innovative style of learning. Tell us about how that was innovative.
Audiovisual materials was a big support in students' abilities to learn. Not everybody was a good learner, not everybody learned from print. So the audiovisual materials, which were slides, films, audio tapes, these supplemented print materials. And when the media specialists worked with a student, we were able to take them to what they needed.
And how did it help learners that were of different abilities? Tell us about that.
Students were given the time that they needed. If they didn't pass a course, they were given the opportunity to take the course again at no cost. But because there were different learning abilities, some learned better audio visually than they did with print. They weren't all scholars in that way, but they still could learn. And that's what our job was to do, to help them learn in the best way that they could.
Good, good. All right, now we're going to move to another topic. And it's going to be about mastery learning, which we just told about. And so all I want you to do is just give us a very brief, I've had many people talk about mastery learning. So it's not like you're gonna have a little piece of it, but just from this concept of the media specialist. First of all, you're called the LRC because the resources were not simply the traditional library. Now, today, everyone has that, which is one of the reasons why it was easy to go back to library, because now all libraries were that. But in the beginning, it wasn't, and that's one of the things that was innovative about it, is that Brookdale was doing that, okay, right? All right, so now what I want you to talk about is the mastery learning, which mastery learning was, you touched on a little bit. Mastery learning was you were given an objective and given the time to master that particular objective, but it required so many different and innovative ways in which students were allowed to learn.
Innovative.
All right? So, do you want to think about that for a minute, or you want to go right ahead?
Innovative, so many different ways. Students at the time were given the opportunity to learn, and if they couldn't, were given the opportunity to learn. There wasn't pressure. And students, we all have different learning. Now, students had different learning abilities, or
Styles, abilities.
I'll stay with abilities. So if print wasn't their thing, it could be supplemented with a visual. It could be a film. It could be someone speaking. We had audio visual, we had films, slides. And not only were these purchased on the market, and the media specialist, our job was to find what was available, what was being produced in education that we could acquire in the Learning Resources Center. But
we were on the forefront of production of those things as well.
but we made them
Yeah,
ourselves.
we made them.
Yeah.
And that was...
Forefront of production, that's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, when I did marketing for
the IDL was called the Instructional
Development.
Development Lab, right?
Yeah.
And that was, I mean, we had some photographers, we had artists like Johanna. We had all these
And
different
Dana.
people that were involved in that. So let's go back and I'll ask you the question again. What was the role of media specialists in mastery learning?
In Mastery Learning, students had the opportunity, they had the time, they could learn from print and or audiovisual materials. And the audiovisual materials were innovative at the time, and it was something that the media specialists would show the students or take them to. So when a student would come in and ask for a question, had the need to fulfill an objective, perhaps they had to write a paper. We went to print, it would be journals, it would be books, and also we had audiovisual materials. What was interesting is not only were they on the market being sold to education, but also we made them on campus in the Instructional Development Lab to work with the specific learning objectives. So media specialists work with faculty one-on-one. Everybody had different needs to produce learning objectives and how they should be, how the students should prove that they have learned the objective. So to help them, everyone had different learning abilities. It wasn't always print. That's where the audiovisual materials came into play.
Excellent, good. All right, now I'm going to let you think about this one as a little bit. I want you to just think about anything else that you want to add about Brookdale at that time. And that could be the personal interactions, that could be any of those things, the camaraderie, so Joe Robinson talked about how Harlacher said, hey, the faculty have to come in on Saturday, and they'd have pizza and beer, and they'd have to, all the men and women faculty would go down and they would paint the fitness lab.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, but there were a lot of those things that were going on. I'm sure when you moved the LRC from one building to the next, and there must have been an incredible amount of upheaval and work for the media specialists, because you still had to be helping students while they were making that move. Do you remember
I don't
that?
remember, no,
Okay.
it was no big deal. I remember watching this building, the long one being built, and as soon as they got the structure put in place, they put the American flag up, so that was good. But when we moved in, it was really easy. No,
So, but what else about the early years do you want to talk about?
yeah, there was something I wanted to say.
Just don't lose, because it's touched, this one. It's okay, no problem.
No, that's good.
This is my worst quality of doing this. Oh, well.
You're doing great. Don't say that, because you're doing great. You were doing it differently, and that's what your style is, and that's perfect. We're going to get good content out of this.
Okay.
So just think of putting together a learning package and going, wow, we're really struggling to get the right photos for this, and then booyah, you find them after struggling, and you go, and as your team would say, oh, look, we've done it again. So think of it. We're going to have we done it again after this comes out.
Okay, so what was your last question? Oh, what do I remember?
Just anything that you remember about the early days.
Okay, I'm going to remember this, the socks.
Sure.
I think that's interesting.
Carl didn't remember who it was.
Okay.
And so they will be an anonymous person, and we'll credit them anonymously in that way. Just say, I wish I could remember who the speaker was.
Yeah. Do I want to mention that we were in the union? I don't think I should.
No,
Yeah.
that's
No,
not-
there was camaraderie. There's definitely, we'd have
but
faculty
that camaraderie
meetings.
spilled over outside the union.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I would
It
talk
was a
about that.
wonderful place to work, and everybody, you know what I felt, Jack? Because we were positive with students, we were positive with one another. Always positive. Because you couldn't be negative. Our job was to be positive. so unlike the outside world, the real world. And that's what I liked about Brookdale. Even when we had committees or meetings, it was always a positive.
That's good. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about your team in the LRC, starting with Eleanor and then some of the other folks that you worked with.
You want me to show the picture I have?
Yeah, hold on.
We can show a picture after that.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah,
You
so,
can talk about
yeah.
it.
Okay. Okay.
So tell us
Yeah, I'm
about,
just
tell us
thinking.
about the people that you worked with in the LRC.
When I started working July 1, 1970 in the Learning Resources Center, there were already Eleanor Ebling, who was the head of it. Wait, that's not right. It was Howard Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
When I started working in the Learning Resources Center, July 1, 1970, the head was Howard Richmond, and fellow media specialists were Eleanor Ebling, Martha Thompson, Joyce Semonite. And each of us had different jobs. Mine was the reference collection to build it, and other things. Everybody had something different. Martha Thompson was in charge of a New Jersey collection. But what we all had in common is we worked respectively with different faculty, and we all worked with students. Whoever would come into the Learning Resources Center and needed help or support in finding the materials they needed, they'd come to whoever was at the reference desk. So we all shared that.
Excellent. All right. So now we're going to come to the final question, and that question is for you to talk about your, what your personal feelings are about Brookdale, and this can span your whole career. You came here fresh out of the master's program, right? This was your first job, first full-time job, and was it your last full-time job? Yeah. So I think that's an important thing.
But I can
to
bring
talk
me
about.
into the community now. That's how it's
Sure,
helpful.
that'll be good.
The skills that I learned here
Good. So
in
then-
music.
and then you can.
I
you
did the
can-
artwork too.
Yeah, all right, so think about that, just take a minute to think about that. And then when you're ready to talk about that, as well as your experience at the Crane House now, and how all of that very beginnings of Brookdale, when you came here, as a young, graduate student who had just left the University of Michigan, tell us about your experience at Brookdale over your, how many years?
41.
All right, so tell us about your experience over your entire career at Brookdale, and what about the beginnings of it, shaped the way that made you feel like you had to stay here.
Yeah. What sentence should I start with? Anything?
All right, so I'll give you the prompt that you should start with.
Oh, that's okay. I feel very blessed to have been associated and working with Brookdale for 41 years, and I'm still associated with it. But the skills and the opportunities I learned were irreplaceable. And here's an example. Not only did I have my library experiences, but I became a photographer. One of the things that I was hired for was my art background. I was asked to hold exhibits and displays in the library, and I went into the art community and I did that. Consequently, I became a professional photographer myself from those experiences. And in the lifelong learning division, the non-credit, I developed a course called Solo Travel for Women, which I taught for 12 years. I also taught design, what makes a good photograph or what is a good design, and I taught that for a number of years as well. So I had that opportunity. And whatever one wanted to do, we could do. And I'd like to tell you this, that at the beginning, when Brookdale started, it was so innovative. There were courses being taught that were innovative, were different, and they were allowed to happen. And it was exciting because faculty were also, I remember a team was going to Egypt to develop learning materials for their course. And when they came back, and they went, oh, wait,
Take your time.
when they came back to develop learning materials. What did I just say before that?
You were talking about when they came back from Egypt. That was
Before
right
that.
there.
So I was doing things, I was even doing innovative courses in the library for starters. And it was in the first few years, somebody came to address the faculty, or they were a speaker. I don't remember who it was a prominent person. And what they said to us was, pull up your socks. We were running so fast, doing so much, being so excited, working here and being here, that the metaphor for your socks are falling down came into play. And I'll never forget that, because that's how innovative Brookdale was, how exciting in every aspect. To this day, I'm so proud of all that's going on in different areas. We're still evolving. I am Brookdale. I am Brookdale. I am Brookdale.